Hello, my name's Matthew. Welcome to the channel. Here we kind of talk about maritime related stuff, and that's kind of what my content's based around. Today we're going to be talking about what's the Officer of the Watch oral exam like. And if you don't know what an Officer of the Watch oral exam is, it's basically the final exam that you do before you can qualify as an officer. So it's that transition from cadet to officer, and it's just this long, intense oral exam that you have to do. So I passed mine last month in August. So I'm just going to be talking a bit about what it's like, what to expect, because it is a bit daunting at first when you don't really know what to expect. So basically I'm just going to talk about my experience, how it went for me, just to give you a general idea of what to expect. So firstly, the oral exam is different in every country, and then in every country, every examiner is going to be different. So it's a one-to-one, and each examiner will have their different style of examining you, different kind of questions that they like to ask. But this is just to give you like a general idea. So I did my exam in the UK, and in the UK these exams are done by the MCA, or the Maritime Coast Guard Agency. So they follow a certain standard. Now this standard can be found in MGN 69. It basically just outlines all of the things that they could possibly ask you on, but to be honest, it's a bit vague because it basically just covers everything. Anyways, if you haven't read it, you definitely should. I'll link it down in the description. Just have a read through it. It basically says everything, but it's just good to know what to expect in that sense. The best way probably to know what to expect is by reading oral reports, but I'll just get into that later. So because of the COVID-19, my exam was a bit different to the normal oral exam. I had to do mine online. So basically we used the Microsoft Teams app. So that meant that I would be doing the exam from my laptop, from home, and it would just be an online thing, which is a bit strange, but anyway, that's how we're doing it now. Now, doing online meant that I didn't know which Marine office was going to examine me. It could have been anyone in the country. And also just it was going to be a little bit different, so it's kind of difficult to know what to expect in that sense. So how it works is then a week prior to your exam, the MCA will send you a link by email. You click on this link the day of the exam, and that brings you to the Teams call, and basically you just wait in a waiting room there until the examiner joins. You just need to make sure that you have the Teams app downloaded onto your laptop and that you don't use the browser, because you have to do that. Now the length of an oral exam kind of varies. Usually it can be, I don't know, a normal exam might be half an hour to an hour, but I found with the online oral exam it's usually a bit longer. Most of the guys in my class have got like an hour and a half. Mine was an hour and 20 minutes, but then again, there was a guy who had a 40-minute exam, so it definitely varies. In terms of structure, the MCA usually have the same kind of structure for every exam. They usually start off by asking you about your last ship. Then they'll ask you about just general theory questions. They'll usually ask you about passage planning, some sort of emergency, and then any other general things like meteorology or stability or law, whatever you can think of. It just goes on like that. Now for me, this general question part lasted 40 minutes, and then the other 40 minutes was the buoyage, the lights and shapes, the collision situations, and then also the radar plot and the Rule 19 question, which is restricted visibility. So that was 40 minutes for me, and then that's it basically, then you're done. So mine lasted an hour and 20 minutes, so sort of like half if you want to look at it like that. Now, like I said earlier, reading past oral reports is a super idea to kind of get an idea of what to expect, but you really should just take them with a pinch of salt. People can tend to exaggerate maybe the questions they got asked, and then they'll give this amazing answer, but that's not always the case. I definitely found before my oral that reading these reports were helpful, but they actually just made me more nervous because these people who made these reports sounded like these superhuman mariners who just knew everything, when in reality that's just not the case. The examiner will almost definitely ask you something that you don't know, but what's important is how you respond to that. Are you going to try guessing and bluffing your way through it, or are you going to do the safe thing and admit you don't know something, which is obviously the safer answer? I definitely say though, if you do not know something like that, admit you don't know it, but then follow up by saying, I would find my answer from this publication, or I would ask the captain maybe for help, just so that they know that you're not scared to ask questions or admit that you don't know something. So in terms of what the exam was like, in my case, it really flowed like a conversation. So at the beginning of the exam, the examiner will ask you to confirm your name, your date of birth, and then they'll basically go through how the exam is going to go. So they'll say things like, can you scan the room for me? Because you're in your own home, so you have to scan it around, see everything, prove that your phone is turned off. They explain that you can go to the toilet as long as you've fully answered the previous question. So things like that, and they'll just basically say also, if you're unsure about something, to let them know and say, can you just repeat that please? And yeah, that's kind of it for the beginning. For me, the examiner also said that they would respond to all my answers with just okay, and that was not to say that I had answered correctly, but just to acknowledge that they've heard me. So it's kind of confusing, then you don't know if you've said the right answer. You just give an answer and they just go okay. And that kind of gives like a neutral kind of tone and atmosphere. They don't, you know, smile or anything. It's just very neutral, just them looking at the camera, looking at you, and they're just going to stay quiet until you give an answer of some sort. Now, usually the examiner wants to lead the exam in a certain way. So they will ask you a question, and if you're not saying exactly what they want to hear, they'll keep pushing and nudging until you say what they want to hear, and then they'll move from there because they might have a follow-up question. Now, what I found was that some questions were pre-planned, so they're part of a slideshow almost that the examiner would go through, like put up a picture of a sextant and say, okay, talk me through this, tell me about it. But then I would say the majority of the questions were really based on your previous answer. So you kind of have to be careful with what you give as an answer because they'll probably follow up on that. So don't mention something super advanced that you're not really sure about because they'll probably follow up on it. Now, the oral exam is super stressful, I found anyway, and there's a lot of pressure on it. But in reality, if you've put the effort in throughout your cadetship, you'd be surprised with how much you actually know. Even if you feel before and like, oh my gosh, I don't know anything. I think once you get talking like a conversation with the examiner, I think you'd be surprised with how much you actually know. It's also just good to remember that the examiner wants you to do well. They're not trying to fail you, which some people feel like. Worst case scenario, you just have to do it again next month and you'll come back stronger and you'll know what to expect then. It won't be as daunting. If any of you watching have done the oral before, please just let us know in the comments. It's great to hear what people thought of the orals, hear people's opinions, because it is different for everyone. So it's nice to hear different perspectives and maybe some things you noticed that might help someone else. All right, yeah, so that's kind of it. That's kind of my experience of the oral. I'm planning to make a video of my oral report, so exactly the questions I got asked. I think that might be helpful for some people. But yeah, that's kind of it for now. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure that you subscribe if you like the content. And yeah, see ya.